Break 1-9? Break 1. All right. Thank you, Bo. Let's talk about marriage. You know, we were praying for Tim, and when I think of Tim and Sharice, that's a marriage. I mean, I know Tim's feeling ill right now, but I see nothing but praise in that family. I mean, can you imagine as a father and a family, my younger kids, to have sons like he has? What a deal. That's what marriage is all about. I mean, that's to me, that would be a goal. Would you agree, Tiff, for us? I'd like to introduce ourselves. Obviously, first I'm going to introduce my wife, Tiffany, here. Her maiden name was Fox. Pretty obvious. You know, and I met her when I thought of that. She is quite a person. Has all kinds of, she's got a degree. She's a psychologist, a school counselor. She has all the academics to be up here and lead this information. And, when I met her, she was a college cheerleader. So, and I'm just a greasy mechanic. So it's kind of pretty obvious to me how excited I am to be married to her.
And I feel the same. And so I'm probably going to be the somber one. He's going to bring a little humor tonight. Bear with us. Some of you that were at the marriage retreat will hear some of the things we talked about there, but we want to share our story because we can't go forward and tell you what a difference our marriage, how beautiful it's become, and how ugly it was before without sharing our story. And it has not always been perfect. It's been tough. We have been married 14 years this year. It has been hard work. We work hard every day now to make it what it is, and that is a good marriage, a marriage where we thrive, and we're not just surviving. And speaking of surviving, I've got to go back. 5 years ago, we had 3 children under the age of 6. My mother-in-law is an awesome woman. She had planned this amazing vacation to Alabama with all of Dan's family. He has 3 brothers. And we were going to go in this big, huge house to this island in Alabama. And it was supposed to be the vacation of a lifetime, right? Well, it wasn't. It wasn't.
I thought it was. I mean,
And Patrick, we can show the photo. This picture represents a time in our life when things weren't clicking. They weren't working out. They weren't working well. We were just surviving our marriage. We didn't really know at the time that things were so messed up, but they were. We were not thriving, and we are here today to say this was ugly. I want to show you my face in that picture. That's a fake smile, and that's in Alabama. We're all sitting on the couch, and if you look at Dan's face, notice he is totally not with us. He is looking the other direction, and that is kind of what we're ministering to you in our hearts today, what we believe in so much, what's made a difference in our lives so much, in our marriage. We are now one, and we now function in a way in our marriage that he's not looking over in the distance. I just want to share with you what happened at that vacation. That morning, about Thursday morning of that vacation, had been a long week. Again, Dan was with his brother, so it was intensified. It was a little harder than usual. But I was doing everything, taking care of the kids, entertaining them, cooking. I was having a vacation all by myself with my 3 kids, basically. And I got up and went for a run that Thursday morning. I wanted to go all the way to the end of the beach, end of the island. And I got there, and I totally just sat down. And I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to come back. And it wasn't that we were overcoming big things. We were not, it wasn't addictions or abuse or infidelity. It was just the way things were working. And things were not working out very well for us. I was exhausted. Emotionally, physically, I was exhausted as a wife. I got up and ran back because I was only worried about our 15-month-old falling into the pool that was outside the house. And I thought, oh, what if Dan doesn't wake up? I've got to go home because the child might fall in the pool. And I remember getting in the car that Friday morning, and Dan said, oh, wasn't that an amazing vacation? An amazing vacation. And I said, no, it was not amazing. And I show you this picture because when I look at it, we have come so far. We don't work like that anymore. And what God has done in our lives and the way we're working together as one now has made a tremendous difference. We're thriving now. And I had to take you back there because it's important for you to understand where we were and where we're going. Patrick, how Dan became the man.
Should I bring him up for the whole lesson? Mm-hmm. Okay.
How Dan became the man. So what did we start doing differently? We believe in this so much, we're ready to talk to you about it. In Ephesians, ladies, we have been directed to do about one thing, and we like to call it respect and show reverence to our husbands. But gentlemen, you've been held to a higher level. And I'm going to read in Ephesians, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church, without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In this way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife himself, after all, no one ever hated his own body, but he feeds and cares for it, just as Christ does the church, for we are members of his body. And what happened? Dan became my Jesus with skin. And so, ladies, back there in Alabama, I was tired, I was worn out, I was emotionally and physically exhausted, most of the times at the end of the day, because we weren't fulfilling our roles. We weren't working together as one. He became my Jesus with skin. And what that looks like for a man versus a woman, ladies, we got it easy. We do. And when he started being my Jesus with skin, things started changing and happening in our lives.
And that, when, as a husband, when you decide to lead the family, you're taking on a lot of responsibility. Matter of fact, all the responsibility. I mean, that means biblically everything that falls on your shoulders. I mean, everything. It's an analogy that, as I did auto repair for 10 years, if my mechanic left an oil plug loose and ruined the engine, for you that don't know, engines need oil to run. Anyway, if that were to happen, whose responsibility? Is that the mechanic? No, it's me as the owner of the business. So when you step up to be the leader of your family, you're taking on a tremendous amount of responsibility. It all comes on your shoulders. And kind of an example for that, Faith and Tyler, could you guys come up here for just a brief moment here? You can bring your 40 ounce or whatever that is. There we go. Just right up here. Okay, let's look at Tyler here. I mean, this is a big dude here, right? And Faith, very small individual. Let's see if we were to have an arm wrestling contest between these two. Can we predict an outcome?
You'd be amazed.
Well, go ahead. So where I'm going with this is, if you look at these two individuals, they're created differently, and Tyler's going to be able to do things differently than Faith is also. So then, Faith, you can sit down now. Thank you. Now, Jared, come on up here if you would.
No offense, you're not as pretty as my wife.
Definitely not as pretty, but now this would be, if we were going to have an arm wrestling contest for Tyler, wouldn't you rather see Tyler arm wrestle Jared than Faith? Wouldn't you? So what Tiff was doing in that slide, first of all, let me back up. My father was a provider, a good father. I'm thankful for him, but all he did is work. You girls can sit down now, thank you. All he did, though, is he would go to work and come home, and then my mom did everything. And that's kind of the way Tiff was raised, too. And so and a lot of this stuff I learned from reading books on how to be the best father I can be. And what I discovered around the revolution, when we were farmers and everybody was around home, the father was there with the kids. I mean, the father was there in all the decisions, was basically involved in everything. And so, right when the 40-hour week came and now the fathers are gone, it's kind of a trap. And so I've learned what really changed our life tremendously was me stepping up and helping her make this daily decisions. That means if Stella wants to go spend the night somewhere, I need to be involved in that. And it tremendously changed our family dynamics when you start doing it the way that God intended it. And, I was telling Bo at the first session last week, I mean, from what I'm learning, you could probably be married to Hillary Clinton and this stuff would work. I mean, so where I'm going with that. But, so, anyway, I mean, biblically, if you apply this, you probably could, probably.
How do you top that? So Dan started becoming a leading father and not just a loving one. And I don't want to draw the picture that he was not a great father, you all. He was an excellent father, a loving father, a good father. But what he did, he stepped into that role. He stepped into that role in Ephesians of what God designed his role to be. And that's much larger than mine. And because he stepped into that role, he became my Jesus with skin. Something that's been weighing on me this week that I want to share with you as I reflected back at our marriage retreat and what I said and what I could have said differently and what Dan said that we could have said differently. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Sometimes I think that's a used statement. But what God was talking to me this week about was that when we were serving back in that picture, we were Christians. We thought we knew what we were doing. We were serving in separate rooms. We were serving in separate rooms of our house. And like Bo said this morning, we are to be a reflection of the greater love and the greater love between God and man. And so if your mirrors are in separate rooms and you're serving in separate rooms, are you really mirroring God's love and the purpose for your union and your marriage? But I wanted to share that this week because that's been on my heart. We were serving in separate rooms, and now that we're serving together, wow, I'm not exhausted anymore, and I am not arm wrestling the world. I was arm wrestling everything.
And one way to look at that, if you want the relationship this way correctly, you've got to have this. I mean, you can do a lot of things wrong. If this relationship is correct, this will naturally fall in line. The next slide would be you both lose. This one is pretty simple to think about. It's pretty accurate. I like using analogies. If Bo goes out and wrecks Megan's Mustang, is Megan the only one that loses there? No. They both lose. So when you attack each other, who are you? You're actually attacking yourself. That's extremely counterproductive, and you got to look at it that way. When you become two, become one. That's what you do. Which kind of reminds me, what's it in Genesis where it says the man leaves the home? And thinking of that, now that I know Bo, I can't believe he ever got married, because if you have to leave your mom to get married, I can't imagine he would have done that. Just kidding, Bo. Anyway.
So this one helped us, at the end of the day, when you're frustrated with your spouse, and you really, ladies, I've been on the side of the bed when I'm so mad at him, and I'm about ready to fall off, right? So I'm like on that side of the bed, I'm so mad at him, I don't want to touch him, I don't even want my feet to touch him, I'm so mad at him. Oh, I'm mad at him. And so when I'm on the side of the bed...
Bed.
Yeah, it's a big bed. It's a big bed. And you're on that side of the bed, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to touch him. Don't you touch me. When we go to bed like that, I'm not just losing. He's not just losing. We're both losing. Don't ever let the sun go down. Don't ever let the sun go down on your anger. And this is what God talked to me when we were preparing about this marriage. Satan lurks, I believe, in our homes at night if we allow it. And when you go to bed angry, you're allowing Satan to come in and attack that marriage. When the sun comes up, he has done damage. And so we try to always function now. If we have a disagreement or an argument, sun doesn't go down, we try to fix it, and we realize, because we are one, that we must. There's no winner or loser. It's not a fight. It's not a battle.
And the devil, he knows how. He's an expert at what gets you. Because Tiff and I have had serious marital issues. I mean, I'm serious, but I really can't think of what they were. And so what that proves to me is that the devil knows what works. You know, and it's not like we had some major. We had major issues, but they were not like major things you're thinking of. But my point in that is the devil works. He knows what to do. You know, it's kind of like you're trying to get the cap off of a paint can. You know, you can work and work, but once you get it off a little bit, it's easy to get off. And that's the way the devil works in your life in a variety of ways, but especially marriage. And it's incredibly important for him to ruin your marriage, because marriage is such a strong unity.
And we are to be a reflection. Exactly, that's what our purpose is, to be a reflection of the greater love. And so what was happening, I believe, in our marriage, like Dan said, we didn't really have big things to overcome, but Satan was attacking us. He was attacking me. And when I sat down on the beach and didn't want to come back, he was trying to get me. He was trying to get us. And what we weren't doing was following the roles that God designed for us. Satan attacked Eve in the garden on purpose. He attacked Eve on purpose, not Adam. And I was being attacked. I was arm wrestling the world, and I was being attacked. But when my Adam stepped in, my Solomon, I call Dan my Solomon, and he started... when he started... praying him into that role of what he was supposed to do and all those things that he was supposed to do for me, Satan, he doesn't knock at the door, because Dan is fulfilling that role and taking care of me. He no longer was just a provider, but he became a protector. He became a protector. Survival to thriving would be the slide. At the marriage retreat, we had a question. So what did you do? How did you do this? Like specifically, what did you do to make this work? How did you do that, right? Okay, so I have to admit, I thought, because I had some degrees and certifications, that I could run the show. I thought, because I was the woman and I could multitask, I'm going to tell everybody what to do all at once, and then cook dinner and do the laundry and tell Dan what to do at the same time. Ladies, we're good at that, aren't we? And what happened is that I got out of the way. So my training and my upbringing told me that I should be leading the family. This goes back to the way we were raised, and no disrespect in that.
Yeah, what we found in our family is, like, for instance, she can say, like, do 3 things, and I can't even comprehend the first thing, but she's already telling me to do something else, you know. And so what we've realized when we started doing, and then, you know, the few times before, when I'd get excited or upset, the kids would jump into action. I mean, but now, you know, I'll just tell her, look, just write a list down and I'll get it done, you know, and the kids react. And so it just, like I say, she when we did it in the way I believe God taught us to align our family, things seemed to work a lot better and amongst us ourselves as well.
But the world was telling me that I needed to be in charge and I needed to to tell Dan that all he needed to do was provide. And I think that's where we've come. I'm trying to speak to younger people with younger kids. We just totally believe, you all, that the husband, the father, has to be a leader in the home. He has to be a part of the home. He has to be a part of what's happening. And it doesn't mean that Dan doesn't get my opinion.
Right. I mean, an example of this, one of my roommates was a real fine dresser in college, and he had some shirts that were out of style for him back then that he gave me, and I still like to try to wear them, but I will, I submit to her too at times. You know what I'm trying to say? I mean, she when I don't need to be wearing 20-year-old shirts, even if they are Abercrombie and Fitch, it's I do what I'm told,
Some of those have disappeared. So I got out of the way. If you'll pull up Dan sits at the table slide, please. I got out of the way because this was a question that was asked at the marriage retreat. Well, what did you do? I got out of the way. And I started, instead of screaming at him or explaining to him that he needed to do this and this and this, I decided I had to be that respectful wife. I had to do the things that I needed to do to let Dan function the way he needed to function. So what did he start doing? He became a part of our life other than just being a provider. Dan sat at the table. In Psalms 128:3, I want to read this. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house. Your sons will be like olive shoots around your table. So what Dan started doing for me and the kids, he didn't just come home. He didn't just come home and provide. He became a part of our life. And I'm going to brag on him. This man can be gone 3 or 4 or 5 days because he travels. He's a very busy man, but he doesn't skip a beat. And so what happened, he became to sit at the table. He became a part of our family instead of me running the show. He would say, are there any problems? And he still does that via the phone. Are there any problems? What do I need to take care of about? What do the kids have homework? Those are the questions he started asking me that totally made me not so drained like in Alabama at the end of the day. He began to sit at the table. But you cannot come home, men, expecting to tell her what to do without being involved. And this is critical. This is so critical. So men, some of you may think you want a wife that submits. But if you're just going to work and coming home, you can't expect her without being involved to do that. The way we live our lives now, these days, we're so busy. Women are juggling so much. There are sometimes I'm worn out before I even get to work. And so, gentlemen, you must be her provider and her protector. And Dan began to do just that.
And the term submit is such a bad word in a way. I like to call it leadership. I mean, we've all worked for people that when they're sticking their finger in your chest, and the only reason you're doing it is because you're told you have to. You don't want to please that person. That is not how you lead your family. You want to lead your family in love, just as the Bible says, and it works totally different. I mean, I've seen people think, she's got to submit, and they're wanting to be the guy that just sits on the couch and pushes them around and stuff. That is not biblical. And it does I can't see how that would work either.
What I began to realize too, ladies, is that I cannot be a father on my very best day. I cannot. I can be a wife and I can be a mother, but I cannot be a father. And when Dan began to step into this role, I was able to be a mother and a wife. It was amazing what happened. I was like, this is easy. Y'all like to ride. I like to ride. I love to be the passenger. On vacation, my favorite thing is to not have to drive. Anybody else? I like to sit and enjoy the ride. And that's what I get to do every day now. Because he is at the wheel.
And, she's using the vacation. That's a perfect example. as a man, when we're on vacation, I mean, let's get there. We're not stopping. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. And the wife, she just wants to chill and look around. And we're built differently, and that asset that I have as far as getting things done seems to work better in my position in the family.
Let's move on to what happens. On the slide, what happens? So let's take a look at what happens in marriages. And Bo touched on this today, but we want to make sure you understand if Satan is trying to attack your marriage, it's because you are a Christian, and it's because you are to mirror and reflect the greater marriage between God and man, and he wants to attack that. Don't let him. But over 50% of marriages end because it starts to become about your happiness and not your purpose, and that is to function together as one. Your marriage is the full expression and design of God's image in human beings, and this has been on my heart this week. John 3:30, I must become less and less, and he must become more and more. Whenever I am mad and angry at this man, it's about me. It's about me. Think about it. Think about the last time you got angry with your spouse. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it becomes about me. When it becomes about me, man, I got to become less and less and less. There's a gravel road that I used to run on, and it's 1.5 miles from the farm. And back during those Alabama times, that picture, I would take off, and I'd be so mad at him. Oh, how could he? How dare he say that? Oh, I'm so mad at him. How dare he say that? Because the whole way there, it would be about me. And I remember running and running and running. And getting to that point, I tell myself, when you turn around, it is not going to be about you anymore, Tiffany Bahr. It is going to be about God. And so John 3:30 has been on my heart. I must become less and less, less and less and less, so that he becomes more, because when he is here, this is right. And so the whole way back, it'd take me about, a 1/2 mile. But I'd be like, okay, I got this. It's not about me. It's not about me, God. Because when you think about it, the last time you were mad at your spouse, when you turn that around, when it becomes about God, this falls into place, because this is right. Moving on to conflict will come. We just want to make sure you understand the preconceived idea that just because we're Christians, there will be no conflict in your marriage. Those of you that are single, I'm speaking to you right now. Because we were Christians and we got married, we thought, it's just going to work. It's just going to work. Well, guess what? It doesn't work by itself. And I ask you this, does your relationship with Jesus Christ work every day? Does it work every day? Are there days you got to work at it, don't you? Anybody have to work in the relationship with Jesus Christ? I do. Every day I get in his presence. I try to get plugged in. The same goes for marriage. And so I want you to understand that just because single people that may be getting married, understand this. Conflict will come, but how are you going to handle that conflict? And Matt Chandler has an excellent book. It's called The Mingling of Souls, for you that are married or not married. It's a great book. And he says conflict is going to be a part of your relationship. It's going to be a part of even the healthiest, most romantic, most passionate relationships. Just because two Christians love Jesus and each other doesn't mean all of your life will be smooth sailing. And so, to help you understand that next time you get upset with your spouse, I want to take you, I'm going to use some psychology and counseling, if you guys don't mind for a bit. Think about the last time you were unhappy with your girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse. Think about that, when you're unhappy. Typically, it was because of an unmet expectation. Okay, you got that? You got that? You're holding that thought right there? You were like, yeah, oh, right. So, Dan, I don't always meet his expectations. Well, a lot of the time. And
sure.
Before...
This, I might add that she is a psychologist, trained, schooled. I took psychology 3 times to pass it because I thought it was such bull butter. And here I am married to one now. So that might, I may fall asleep during this, to be honest with you, but here we go.
He doesn't tell me when he's going to say these things. Like, sometimes I'm prepared, okay. So what we need to do is...
You want me to start talking about Bo while you think about...
Sure. No. What we have to learn to do as married couple is respond instead of react. And I want to send you home with this little tidbit to take home with you tonight. What we started doing was thinking about our unmet expectations. Sometimes Dan is late. He's not always on time. And so we try to prepare ourselves with that by saying, I tell him like 15 minutes in advance. We try to make things work despite our unmet expectations. And what I typically would do when he would be late is walk in the door. You're late! Right? You're late. That's what we all want to say. Yell at them. You're late. What I try to do, what I've learned to do, is to respond instead of react. Think about that time you were upset with them. You reacted, right? I try to teach my middle school kids, stop reacting and respond to your friend. They're hurting. They're upset. Dan didn't mean to be late. Sometimes, I don't know whether or not. But I've tried to respond to him instead of react, and it looks something like this. Using I statements. I am very upset that you're late, honey. Next time, please try to be on time.
That sounds like a school teacher to me.
But if you can understand and identify where your frustration comes from with those unmet expectations, really, seriously, it can help you. Those of you that aren't married, start thinking about that. What drives me crazy? What is it that may drive me crazy in my future spouse? Right, because you all know what that may be. And whatever it is, start thinking about how you're going to prepare yourself now. Start training yourself. How am I going to respond instead of react? When we started responding to each other instead of reacting, great things started to happen. Our communication worked a whole lot better. And we also, there was distance between us. It helps the distance between us. 11. We're going to go now to an important slide because those of you that have done the love languages, awesome. Those of you that have not, I encourage you to do so. How many of y'all have? Do you know what your love language is? Can I see a raise of hands? If you have not, y'all, I have copies of just the quiz. So I will be happy to make copies for you and your spouse afterwards so you know what your love language is. Before we go on, this one is important. There's acts of service, words of affirmation, receiving gifts, and quality time and physical touch. Basically, Gary Chapman, his premise in this is that when you are doing these things for your loved one, their love tank is full. When you're not, if you're not speaking their love language, their love tank is empty. So those of you that are single, maybe getting married, I want to talk to you for just a moment. If you want to figure out which one hers is, take the quiz. But mine is acts of service. And I'll be quite very blunt when I explain this. After we did this with each other, 6 years ago, 7, we started really working on our marriage. We dug into this. Dan found out that when he was the dish dog, he calls himself, that great things happened. Like, I would light up. I would have a smile. He calls himself the dish dog. So there is nothing better at 9 o'clock at night after he's put the kids to bed, and I've had a long day at work, he stands. We live by the highway, too, just to let you know. He stands, and our kitchen sink faces the highway. He stands in the kitchen, at the kitchen sink with his red skivvies on, or whatever color Hanes he has on that day. And he stands at the sink with the lights on and the blinds up, doing the dishes. Yeah. Now, I asked him to draw the blinds, but let me tell you all what that does for my love tank. Because what is my love language? My first one? Acts of service. So when somebody does something for me, that's what I'm trying to get to here. When Dan is the dish dog and he does an act of service for me, boy, my love tank is just filled up. It is filled up. So I challenge you, and those of you that aren't married yet, to do that with your spouse and find out what their love language is. I have those copies. I also want to point out, my last one is physical touch. And when I was making this slide, I know him by heart. And I was like, oh, What's that last one? That's how bad my physical touch is. Guess what, you guys? That's one of his first. And so if I am not making an effort every day to reach out to him and touch him like this.
I got to take every opportunity.
Yes.
You know?
But if you'll see, I don't know if you see us, but we have made it a point to touch each other because that is one of his main love languages. And if you're not doing that, his love tank is empty. It's empty. And so when I touch him, because it's physical touch, how you doing? His love tank is full. And I just challenge you to find out what theirs is and speak that to your spouse. Challenge you. This week, go home and I'll stay all night and copy these for y'all. I challenge you to find out what there is and then use that this week to find out what their love language is.
So basically, that's the psychologist's way of explaining that from the greasy mechanic's way of talking. Find out what your mate likes and do that. Okay? Thank you.
I don't even know where to go on after he does some of this. Okay.
Well, while she's looking at that, let's do a little review here, guys. So you want to be the leader of the house. That means when your wife comes home from a stressful day and she's in a bad mood, whose responsibility is that? Raise your hand. You want to take that on. That doesn't matter who's at fault. It's your family. It's your responsibility.
And next week we're going to
biblical from Tony Evans.
Next week we're going to get into more depth about respect and love. So if that interests you at all, come back next week and we'll share that with you and what it looks like for us, what it looked like for us to start stepping into those roles of a husband, what's expected of a husband and wife, and to respect and then love each other. Let's move on to stop playing on each other's fears. Okay, this is a big one. Dan gets to admit his faults on this one, so I'm going to sit back. But there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. So this is what was happening with us and in our marriage. When you're married to someone over a period of years, whether you know it or not, you become aware of their fears. You do. You know what agitates them. You know what scares them. You know what they don't like. And my fear is failure. I'm up here today. Ooh, been kind of hard. But it's failing. And so my fear, because it's failing, Dan didn't maybe necessarily know that, but he was playing on it. And in the meantime, we were creating distance between us, extreme distance between us. I felt like that I couldn't measure up in all areas, and then what would happen, Dan would come home and sometimes play on those fears.
I knew how to get her tuned up. I mean, you know.
Go on.
What's that?
And so when it comes to whatever your fear is, I beg you and I ask you, because we know we've done the statistics, we know the research, not all of you, but some of you are doing that. Stop playing on each other's fears. Don't get your partner tuned up. Don't do that, because remember, if it's not right here, it's not right here.
And you're hurting yourself, too, because you are one team.
We're going to move on to unmet expectations. Because remember back when we talked about the source of your anger or your frustration. Are there any expectation people in here that are willing to admit it? You thought when you got married she was going to be that and then some. I mean, she was going to be the Cinderella, the perfect, beautiful bride, and you were going to come home to flowers and a home-cooked meal every night, no conflict, everything was going to be perfect. What we learned back at a marriage conference that changed our life quite a few years ago was that what we needed to do, because we are to be one and love each other, was lower our expectations. Now, that doesn't mean you can't expect things of your spouse. That's not what I'm saying. But it's important that if you are an expectation person, that you lower them. Well, what does that look like? Any of you that are hard on your spouse, I'm not going to make you raise your hand, and you're constantly on them or nagging them, just remember they're human and lower your expectations. Because when we started doing that with each other, it really helped our marriage. So the more frustrated we are, the more we allow anger and pride to shape our reactions. There's no excuses for your anger. I don't know who I'm speaking to tonight, but at one of our marriage conferences, at one point in our marriage, because things weren't working right, remember I sat down on the beach in Alabama and I was like, I'm not going back. I was frustrated. I was angry. I was mad at my husband. I was mad at my mom. I was mad at my dad. I was mad at my dog. I was mad at my cat. I was angry. And what would happen, even though I was a Christian and I knew better, sometimes all that would build because we weren't communicating. We were not on the same page. We were not functioning as one. We were not speaking each other's love language. And I would explode. So you anger people, listen up. I've got 2 words, and I heard them at a marriage conference, so here they are. It's big. Grow up. Because they don't deserve this. Your kids don't deserve that. And there's no excuse for being angry. When you've had enough, go for a walk, take a break. But do not verbally abuse in public or in private your spouse. Never. Because what you're doing there when you do that every time is creating a wall. You're creating a barrier, and you are making what should be one very, very, very distant. And distance is where Satan slips right in. No more anger. Grow up. And here we get to the hard part. All the tools and tricks and love languages, sometimes, guys, I'm ready to tell you they don't work sometimes. Because we've got to get to the root of it, and that's the heart. Would someone who has their Bibles read Colossians 3:15 through 21? That's a lot. Bo, do you mind? All of the tools, tricks, and love languages, it does not address the heart. So we can stand up here today and give you tricks and tools. We can encourage you to fill your spouse's love tank up.
Bo, that's Matthew, Mark, Luke, Colossians. Found it? All right.
Colossians 3:15 through 21. That's a lot, Bo.
Ready?
Ready.
And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you are called in one body, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ richly dwell within you, with all wisdom, teaching, and admonishing one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your hearts to God. And whatever you do, in word or in deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks through him to God the Father. Wives, be subject to your husbands, as it is fitting to the Lord. Or in the Lord, I'm sorry. Husbands, love your wives, and do not be embittered against them. Children, be obedient to your parents in all things, for this is well-pleasing to the Lord. Fathers, do not exasperate your children, that they may not lose heart.
So what I notice when Dan's heart is right, it's not, I disagree, it's not happy mama, happy house. It's loving, leading father, happy home. I truly believe that. Because when he is right here, we are right here. When his heart is right, we are right. And people that are not married, I can't express that enough. You must be right here to be right here. But we can teach you those things, but if you are not praising and putting your peace in your heart in God, there is nothing in this world that will save your marriage. But let me tell you this, what Dan does, I want to send you home with one other tidbit, gentlemen. Sometimes I know Dan is very angry with me or upset. What we've learned, and we'll get to that next week, is the power of the tongue. But tonight, let's focus on this. We have learned that when we turn it around, God, we invite God in our home, there's no longer conflict between us. And something Dan does for me, he's always done. He will praise God for me in front of our kids, at the table, out loud. And gentlemen, if you're not doing that, I can't tell you how that affirms me. I can't tell you. When I hear Dan say, "Thank you, dear Lord Jesus, for my wonderful bride," when we have maybe not agreed or maybe gotten off track, but everything changes in our home, and he does that regularly. So we can tell you about love languages and tools and tricks, but if your heart is not here, this is not going to work at all. Moving on to 1 John 4:12, that slide. We're going to wrap things up tonight. This was Dan's idea. We'd like to show you a video. We have homework for you tonight. When you go home, whether you're dating, married, some of you may have prayed together every day of your life for 40 years. Some of you that are married have maybe never prayed together. But I can't tell you what a difference it's made in our lives when we pray together. 1 John 4:12, but if we love each other, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us. We want to show you a video tonight about being broken. Because when we're broken, I think we can totally be complete and one in God.